G'day guys, welcome back to the channel, and today we are here to preview round 9. A lot of big games coming up, some 50-50 contests, so let's break down some of the big matchups going into the weekend. And first of all, Thursday night, big game between Fremantle and Collingwood in Perth. Collingwood coming off a very tough loss against Geelong last week, losing it on the siren to an unfortunate missed kick from Jack Crisp, and Fremantle coming off one of the worst losses you would see, a terrible performance against St Kilda, so needing a response. Now, being in Perth, I think it does give Fremantle much more of a chance. However, I think this is all about Collingwood, really. I don't really see a way that Fremantle could win this game. I know I'm putting that out there pretty early in the description or the preview to this game, but I think Collingwood honestly were due for a loss. I know that's a bit weird to say how good a form they were in, but I think it's not the worst thing in the world to get a loss out of the way around this stage of the season. And I think it's probably going to be a good sign that they'll be able to fix up a few areas that they've probably glossed over in the last 6 or 7 weeks since they've got on this great form. So I think that's all good for Collingwood. On Fremantle, they were absolutely deplorable on the weekend. They kicked 2 goals to three-quarter time, and they're going to have to beat a team that is one of the best defensive teams in the competition. They couldn't get more than 2 goals against St Kilda. Now, St Kilda are obviously a very good defensive team, but I can't see Fremantle kicking a winning score. Yes, this is in Perth, but Collingwood haven't lost in their last 4 games in Perth. So Fremantle do play better at home. I think it's a pretty safe bet, but I can't see a world where Fremantle can win this game. They have been very inconsistent. They've been better at home, but I don't think it's going to make a difference here against Collingwood. Collingwood are just too good at the moment. They'll win this one, I think, by 20 points or so. My brother has also tipped the Pies for that game. Next one is Essendon up against Sydney. Both teams coming off wins. Essendon haven't been as convincing the last 3 weeks. However, they have won 4 of their last 5 games. And Sydney have been pretty poor, losing 3 games before a very good win in the Sydney Derby against the Giants, of course. Now, like I said, Essendon have won 4 of their last 5 games. Their last 2 wins, though, have been against North Melbourne and West Coast, and both of them have been by under a goal. This is quite a big test for them. While Sydney been patchy in most games this year. Even in their win against the Giants last week, they were very patchy throughout the middle part of the game. And on the bookends of the game, they were This is a very interesting contest between both teams. Both of them are outside the top 8. If there is a chance that either of them make it, I don't see there's enough room for both of these teams inside the top 8 at the end of the season. So I think that this one's going to be a pretty big matchup going into it. So looking at a couple of the matchups going into this game, I think it's a very interesting question mark on who goes to Warner and Heaney for the Sydney Swans. I'm looking at probably Sam Durham to go to one of them at stoppage. Most likely Heaney. I think that Warner's a little bit too explosive for Durham. But if one of them goes forward, it's an interesting matchup for the Bombers. Taking Redmond most likely to go to one of those two. But I do like Warner and Heaney in both of those matchups. And looking at Essendon, I think it was evident last week that in that last quarter, Zach Merritt was the one who took that game away from North Melbourne. So I think safe bet that James Jordan will be going straight to Zach Merritt, be locked next to him for the entire game. So I'm going to be tipping Sydney in this one. My brother's going to be tipping Sydney as well. And the main reason is both teams at their best, I think Sydney win the game. I think Essendon the last 3 weeks haven't shown great signs. They've beaten 2 teams down the bottom very marginally. And they showed some decent signs in the middle part of Anzac Day against Collingwood. But at the end of the day, Collingwood still beat them. Sydney can shut down Zach Merritt. And the Swans last week showed some decent signs. It was a lot better. I liked how their forward line worked out. And I think that's where they can get the Bombers in the end and win the game. However, I mean, it is at Marvel Stadium. It's not exactly a bad venue for the Swans, but the Bombers love it under the roof. So Essendon, I think, have every chance. And I think if they want to prove themselves as a chance to make finals this year, they do need to win this game. The Swans are still heavily underdone with a lot of injuries. So if anything, Essendon should be going to win this game, but I just can't trust them at the moment. I think the Swans, getting that win on the board, hopefully they get them up and going for the rest of the season. Next up is Saturday night, Gold Coast up against the Bulldogs in Darwin. A very interesting game because of not really a neutral venue. Gold Coast have a very good record there, but neither at either side's home grounds. Now, the Gold Coast were coming off a very poor loss against the Lions after being hyped up as one of the biggest Q clashes ever. Didn't live up to the hype whatsoever. The Gold Coast just couldn't keep up with the bigger bodies of the Lions. And the Dogs coming off a rousing performance against Port Adelaide, one of the best performances we've seen from the Bulldogs in some time. So both teams at different ends of the scale right now. Now, the Dogs are in red hot form, while the Suns in the last 3 weeks have been very poor. Suns lost to Richmond, then they were lucky that the Swans dropped off so much in that second half and were able to run over them, and then a very poor performance against the Lions. So the Gold Coast, despite a very, very good start to the year, have dropped off really quick. Can they find their way back is an interesting question, because they were hyped up for the first 6 weeks of the year, but now they've hit a bit of a slump, and if they miss finals again after having another good start to a season, I don't really know where they go from here. I think they'll be fine. I think they will get their form back. But they're coming up against a red-hot Western Bulldogs who've got Bontempelli back now. He's in good form. Treloar came back last week. He'll be good for the run in the legs. Liberatore's been good all year, as you would expect. Ed Richards has been good. Matt Kennedy has arguably been one of the best recruits so far this year. Their midfield runs so deep. Their forward line looks solid, even without Sam Darcy. And their defence, surprisingly, is standing up very nicely. So it's really hard to pick holes through the Bulldogs lineup at this stage. However, in saying that, I'm going to be going the Gold Coast purely for the fact that this is being played in Darwin. The Gold Coast have a very good record up north, and I just can't see the Dogs, after playing in Ballarat in such windy, cool conditions, going up to a warm, humid environment like Darwin and winning a game. The Dogs haven't been so good up there, even when they have gone. So that's why I'm going to be going the Gold Coast. My brother has picked the same, but I mean, I wouldn't be too surprised whatsoever if the Dogs get up in that one. And then the final game we're going to be taking a deep dive into is the Geelong v GWS game. Geelong obviously coming off one of the best wins that they've probably had in the last 2 or 3 years, minus finals. And GWS coming off the last 3 losses and have fallen off a cliff similar to the Gold Coast Suns. Now, Giants the last 3 weeks have been incredibly disappointing, unable to score, and their defence last week against Sydney was exposed, which is one of their strongest lines, the Giants. And then on the Cats' point of view, they're coming off one of their best wins, but they've been a little bit up and down so far this year. However, I think last week is something that's going to get them going. They've always been a bit of a patchy starting team in seasons, but when they get to this middle period, they usually just go up. They usually just start their really good form. In their premiership year, I think they won every single game after round 9. I mean, I wouldn't be too surprised if they start going. And I have to mention Patrick Dangerfield. What a performance he had against Collingwood, especially in that second half. I think Connor Iden probably goes to him, and I think Connor Iden matches up pretty well. We saw how the Swans got under their skin last week, and the Swans forward line was a much lesser forward line than the Cats. So all things point to a Cats win here. However, the Giants have the best record of opposition teams down in Geelong. I think they've won their last 3 games down at the Cattery. The Giants, could be able to pip them here and get back on the winners list, the Giants. It would be an amazing win. It would be one of the biggest wins in the club's history. But with the recent history the Giants have down there, you do have to give them a bit more of a chance. However, personally, I can't do it. I'm not brave enough. I'm going to be tipping the Cats here. Cats are starting to get into some good form. They had a down week against the Blues the week prior to that Collingwood game. But that game, I think, just showed that this Cats team is still going to be up there at the end of the year. That was a real finals-like game, and they still were able to win it. I can't pick the Giants after last week's performance. If it wasn't for Jake Stringer's second half heroics for kicking 3 goals, they would have been smashed by Sydney. And I think if Sydney were either had a little bit more players on the field or they were playing against any team that was inside the top 8, the Giants, they would have been smashed. So honestly, I think the Giants are in a bit of a hole right now. They need to find something. Maybe a trip down to the Cattery where they have good form could be something that sparks them. However, I'm not brave enough to go that far. I think the Cats will win. My brother has gone with the same. So with that being said, let's get to our full tips for round 9. So I have gone with Collingwood over Fremantle, Carlton over St Kilda, Hawthorn over Melbourne, Sydney over Essendon, the Gold Coast over the Dogs, Port Adelaide over Adelaide, Richmond over the West Coast Eagles, Geelong over GWS, and Brisbane over North Melbourne. And my brother for round 9 has gone with Collingwood over Fremantle, Carlton over St Kilda, Hawthorn over Melbourne, Sydney over Essendon, the Gold Coast over the Dogs, Port Adelaide over Adelaide, Richmond over West Coast, Geelong over the Giants, and Brisbane over North Melbourne. So both me and my brother have gone with the same tips this week. On our certainty tips though, I have picked Collingwood to beat Fremantle, of course Collingwood losing over Geelong last week, and my brother has gone with Richmond to beat West Coast, of course Richmond losing to Hawthorn last week. Now, of course, with the certainty picks, last week I picked the Giants to beat the Swans. I got it wrong. And looking at our certainty picks right now, I have got 4 wrong so far this year. My brother has only got 2. So right now, I'm in a pretty big hole. I need to get him missing some tips because I'm not doing very well right now. At the end of the season, we will be doing our Boundary Riders medal live stream, and I'll have to be, at this stage, eating 4 chilies compared to my brother's 2, and I don't really want to eat 1. So 4 is going to be a very big challenge, and we're not even up to halfway through the season, so I'm in a pretty big hole right now. Finally, let's get to our channel's tipping ladder. So at this stage, the boy from SNB still holds the top spot with 54 tips. And my boy Leviticus, I've been shouting him out the last few weeks. He got 8 out of 9 last week. He is in equal top spot with the 54 tips. So sitting in second spot right now, I'm pretty sure he has used his joker though. Now I haven't mentioned him too much on the channel this year in the tipping because he hasn't been up the top. But last year's winner in Brandon Stephen is in 10th spot right now. I don't think he has used his joker just yet, and he's only 5 tips up the top. So he is in 10th spot. He's 2 spots in front of me. I'm sitting in 12th. I dropped down from 10th to 12th this week with only the 6th. Pretty disappointing. I should have done a little bit better than that. Still haven't used my joker though, so I'm still in a pretty decent spot. But Brendan Stephen is still around the mark. He could go back to back. He's only in 10th right now. 5 tips off the pace, and a good joker round could definitely get him up right up there. But right now, at the moment, the boy from SNB still locks on the top spot in the tipping competition. But guys, that's pretty much all we have for this episode of the preview. Of course, for round 9, make sure to let me know down below your tips going into this round. Make sure to let me know if you think there's an upset brewing. But that's pretty much all from me. Make sure to like and subscribe. But for now, catch us all next time.